What if the small pineal gland is far more than a biological curiosity? Beneath the surface of medical textbooks, an enigmatic mystery lies. Tonight we journey into the shadowy recesses of the human mind and a hidden structure at its center. One that has captivated sages, philosophers, and mystics for centuries. History, esoteric traditions, and ancient symbolism converge in this tiny pinecone-shaped organ. Could it be that the pineal gland is not merely a quirk of endocrinology, but the seat of consciousness itself, and a gateway to untold mysteries? For thousands of years, civilizations across the world have speculated about a hidden center within the human skull, a place where the material and immaterial might collide. The famous French thinker René Descartes once claimed that the pineal gland was the very seat of the soul, its central position in the brain marking it as the locus of consciousness itself. Was this bold claim a product of metaphysical insight, or a remarkable convergence of anatomical observation and age-old symbolism? And what of the mysterious third eye found in ancient traditions from India to Egypt? It has been suggested that the pineal gland is the biological third eye, a dormant organ of inner vision that, when awakened, opens our minds to a deeper reality. With some reptiles possessing a so-called parietal eye, does science unwittingly echo ancient wisdom? Then there is the curious iconography, images of pine cones adorning ancient temples handled by gods and revered in rituals of regeneration. Many think it beyond coincidence that the pineal gland so closely resembles a pine cone in its physical structure, indicating the possibility that its repeated appearance throughout history is indicative of ancient knowledge connected to the organ. Might these ancient symbols secretly encode knowledge of the brain's hidden powers, passed down through secret initiations and spiritual arts? And what about the striking fact that with age, the pineal gland can slowly calcify, accumulating tiny crystalline deposits within its tissues? In modern times, this medical curiosity has seeded new anxieties. Is this bland anatomical fact in truth a sign that our inner eye is being sealed shut by unseen forces, closing ourselves off from higher perception and spiritual light? Or could the opposite be true? Could mineralized microstructures within the gland be evidence of a crystallized spirit within us all? From the shadowy corridors of occult literature comes a tantalizing promise. Activate the pineal gland, and you may enter cosmic states, experience visions, or cross into other realities. What is the origin of these captivating beliefs? As we peel back the layers of legend and history, we'll explore how symbols weave myth and fact together, revealing or concealing hidden mysteries. Could it be that the key to understanding the very nature of consciousness lies hidden deep within our brains, anchored in a tiny unpaired organ few have ever seen for themselves? The final answer may turn out to involve not only biology, or history, or symbolism, but the way human beings assemble meaning from all three. The mysterious pineal gland has, for centuries, sparked the imagination of philosophers, anatomists, and seekers alike. But how did it come to be dubbed the seat of the soul, and why has this idea proved so enduring? We may find the answer in the ideas of René Descartes, the influential 17th-century thinker known for the famous phrase, "I think, therefore I am." Descartes, confronted with the unsolved riddle of how the immaterial mind might interface with the physical body, searched for a place in the brain both special and singular. Most brain structures are duplicated, one in each hemisphere, suggesting a kind of duality, but the pineal sits alone, right at the brain's core. Is this single, central locus more than anatomical happenstance? Descartes believed it was the very bridge where body and soul meet, a unique portal through which consciousness flows. This idea did not appear out of nowhere. Medieval and ancient traditions already placed great significance on the center of the brain, where it was thought the mental faculties resided. Descartes' bold claim, elevating the pineal gland, rather than the ventricles, as the focal point, resonated deeply. Its centrality, its singleness, and its obscurity made it a fitting candidate. But why was being central and unpaired seen as so important? Humans have been drawn across cultures to see the center as sacred, the axis around which meaning or power revolves. In Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain cosmology, Mount Meru is described as the central axis of the universe. The entire cosmos is imagined as arranged around this mountain, with continents and oceans radiating outward in concentric layers. Gods inhabit its summit while different realms extend above and below it. Because it sits at the center of creation, Meru functions as the point where heaven, earth, and the underworld align, what scholars call an axis mundi, or world axis. In ancient Greek religion, the sanctuary at Delphi contained a sacred stone called the omphalos, literally meaning navel. Greeks believed this marked the center of the world, the place where divine knowledge emerged. The omphalos reappears in medieval Christian cosmology as a small column or stone within the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Jerusalem was often depicted as the exact center of the world in Mappa Mundi diagrams. The belief that redemption occurred at the center of the world gave theological meaning to geography. Temples, cities, mountains, and thrones are often seen as central points not simply in space, but in significance. They anchor the world symbolically and give orientation to everything around them. Drawing on this notion, later spiritual thinkers saw in the pineal gland not just a biological anchor, but the very throne of consciousness. Could it be that the human longing for a central self, a locus of identity and intent, naturally finds expression in the body's own architecture? The more we learn about the pineal's secretive position, the more we are tempted to invest it with mystery, purpose, and metaphysical weight. But what truly cements this belief is the elegant interplay of its parts. The pineal gland's anatomical uniqueness gives the theory empirical credibility. Descartes' philosophical authority imbues it with intellectual legitimacy. The ancient symbolism of the center as sacred evokes a deep, emotional resonance. Each of these pillars supports the others. If any single piece is questioned, the others remain to uphold the idea. If any piece is affirmed, it seems to cast a validating light across the triad. What makes the seat of the soul theory so captivating is its harmony. If the brain must have a spiritual center, if great philosophers have claimed it, and if all our symbols point to the heart of things, then aren't we compelled to believe? The more one element seems plausible, the more the others gather strength, creating a self-sustaining system of meaning that persists, even as science moves forward. So we must ask, is the true seat of the soul located in the pineal gland, or in the very human pattern of weaving together history, symbol, and observation into a structure so beautiful, it feels impossible to doubt? And if that's so, what other mysteries, what other realities, are always waiting at the center of our beliefs? Could it be that legends of the third eye, spoken of in sacred texts for millennia, hold the secret to unlocking profound human potential? Across the ancient world, from the temples of India to mystical traditions of Egypt and beyond, the idea of a hidden eye of wisdom is a recurring theme. In Hindu texts, the Ajna chakra is described as the locus of insight and expanded awareness, situated between the brows. In yogic and tantric disciplines, activating the third eye is said to bring states of deep intuition, clarity, and connection to the cosmos. This concept doesn't just appear in passing. It dominates philosophies of self-realization, meditation, and mystical perception. But how did this ancient symbol become tied to the pineal gland? As Western scholars and seekers encountered Eastern traditions in the 19th and 20th centuries, they searched for points of contact between ancient wisdom and modern anatomy. The pineal gland, resting along the midline of the brain and figuratively tracing an arc to the brow, seemed an almost uncanny parallel to the ancient location of the inner eye. Some modern mystics even point to the reptilian parietal eye, an organ sensitive to light, as evidence that within our shared evolutionary past, the third eye was literal, a dormant power ready to be rediscovered. Throughout art and mythology, this symbolism only deepens. In ancient Egypt, the uraeus was the upright cobra that appears on the crowns and headdresses of gods and pharaohs. It represents the goddess Wadjet, protector of Lower Egypt, and symbolized royal authority and divine protection. The serpent was typically shown rising from the forehead of the king or deity, poised to spit fire at enemies. The symbol had a political and protective meaning. It marked the ruler as the earthly embodiment of divine authority. This significance was reinforced by the Eye of Horus, or Wedjat. This widely known symbol originates in the myth of Horus, whose eye was injured in a battle with Set and later restored. Because the eye was healed and made whole again, it became a symbol of restoration, protection, and completeness. This idea recurs in numerous cultural contexts. For example, statues of the Gautama Buddha depict his head covered with small spiral curls. The curls serve to distinguish the Buddha from ordinary human figures and to signal his spiritual transformation. The head itself is often shown with a cranial bump called the Ushnisha, a symbolic feature representing wisdom and enlightenment. Are these artistic echoes of a universal truth? In sacred rituals, initiates are urged to awaken the third eye and perceive realities beyond the material. A process some believe to be facilitated by the pineal's unique, secreted chemicals. When all these threads are woven together, the narrative is compelling indeed. Anatomists describe the pineal's unique location, spiritual texts insist on the third eye's importance, and evolutionary curiosities hint at a hidden biological foundation. Each piece reinforces the others, wrapping the belief in an aura of mystery and half-forgotten wisdom. If the pineal gland sits where the ancients placed the third eye, does it not almost demand we reconsider the old tales in a new light? But could it be that these compelling connections are masking an even more concrete explanation? One rooted, not in biology or esoteric science, but in something more universal. The way the human mind binds together symbols, stories, and evidence to construct meaning. What if the sense of hidden truth arises not because each link in the chain is independently strong, but because each element, spiritual tradition, anatomical peculiarity, evolutionary remnant, draws power from the others? If one element is true, if we see alignment between the body and the myth, then the impulse is to grant credibility to the surrounding claims. Doubts about one part are softened by confidence in another, forming a system in which each element appears to confirm the next. Instead of isolated facts, we're drawn into a holistic vision. The triad of history, anatomy, and symbolism feels too coherent to dismiss. In this way, the third eye belief is more than a relic of the past. It's an example of how our minds strive for unity of meaning, blending the visible and invisible into stories with the strength to persist for generations. Does the simple pinecone hold a profound key to the mysteries of consciousness? For countless centuries, cultures around the world have revered the pinecone as a symbol of regeneration and eternal life, its unique structure echoing themes found in both nature and myth. But what is it about the pinecone itself that so powerfully captivates the imagination? And how did this humble seed pod become a stand-in for one of the brain's most mysterious organs? To understand, we must look closer at the pinecone's journey. What makes the pinecone especially interesting from a biological standpoint is that it belongs to one of the oldest reproductive systems among seed plants. Pines and their relatives are gymnosperms, meaning their seeds develop naked, not enclosed within fruit as they are in flowering plants. Instead of flowers and fruit, these trees reproduce through cones, specialized structures that both protect developing seeds and help disperse them. A pinecone is essentially a woody arrangement of modified leaves called scales, each capable of bearing seeds along its inner surface. The spiral arrangement of the scales is distinctive. Examined closely, the scales follow two sets of intersecting spirals that often correspond to the Fibonacci numbers, creating the orderly pattern that gives pinecones their striking geometric appearance. This arrangement allows the cone to pack seeds efficiently while maintaining structural strength. But perhaps the most remarkable feature of the pinecone is that it responds directly to environmental conditions without any muscles or active movement. The scales are built from layers of plant tissue that expand or contract differently depending on moisture. When the air is damp, the tissues swell and the scales press tightly together, sealing the cone shut and protecting the seeds. When the air becomes warm and dry, the tissues shrink unevenly, causing the scales to bend outward. This purely mechanical response allows the cone to open at precisely the conditions when wind dispersal is most effective. This remarkable transition from closed and dormant to open and generative inspired ancient peoples to recognize it as a metaphor for the unfolding of hidden potential. The pinecone is not merely a vessel, but a living symbol of awakening and transformation. Over time, the pinecone's image appears wherever spiritual significance is sought. In the reliefs of ancient Assyria, winged guardian figures known as Apkallu are frequently shown holding a pinecone and a small ritual bucket while blessing the sacred tree of life. Scholars believe the pinecone symbolized fertility or purification, representing the power to renew and sustain life. In the Greek world, the staff of Dionysus, the thyrsus, was traditionally tipped with a pinecone, linking the plant to themes of vitality, ecstatic transformation, and the generative forces of nature. In Roman art and architecture, pinecone ornaments appeared on fountains, temple decorations, and ceremonial staffs, culminating in the enormous bronze pinecone known as the Pigna, now preserved in the Vatican, where it continued to evoke regeneration and eternal life. In Mesoamerican art, pinecones appear in association with evergreen trees used in ritual contexts tied to renewal and seasonal cycles. In Buddhist and Hindu architecture, pinecone-like forms sometimes appear in temple finials and sacred ornaments. Across these cultures, the pinecone repeatedly emerges as a compact symbol of generative power. Its tightly sealed form protecting life within, and its eventual opening suggests release, growth, and the unfolding of hidden potential. So why do modern mystics and seekers draw a line from this ancient symbol directly to the pineal gland? It's more than just the similarity in etymology, the Latin pinea for pinecone, and pineal for the gland. If you observe the surface of the pineal gland under magnification, its lobulated, scaly appearance naturally calls the pinecone to mind. And when spiritual texts speak of awakening the pineal, which, like the pinecone, seems to sit dormant until some mysterious process brings it to life, the analogy appears almost irresistible. Could it be that, just like the pinecone, there is an inner opening within the mind, a latent faculty waiting to be set free? This metaphor of opening is a cornerstone for esoteric philosophy across traditions. The soul as a seed, consciousness as a flower, the mind's eye as a door. The idea that awakening is a process, an inner transformation that changes not only what we perceive, but how we are, feels intuitive, especially when reinforced through symbols so deeply rooted in the natural world. The fascination with the pineal gland as an opening pinecone is not just a matter of biology or shape, but an echo of the mind's own journey of expansion and revelation. If ancient wisdom describes a psychological awakening, should we not also seek a literal physical confirmation in the body? But does the opening of the pineal truly refer to a hidden material change? Or is it in fact a reflection of the way our minds grow, open, and release their potential over a lifetime? Here we encounter the same triadic pattern seen before. The unmistakable likeness between pineal gland and pinecone serves as the tangible anchor. The time-honored symbolism of regeneration provides ancient depth, and the universal metaphor of inner awakening completes the triangle. Each piece strengthens the other two. To historic eyes, the pinecone represents immortality. To the anatomist, it suggests a secret shape hidden deep within. To the seeker, it becomes an invitation to awaken. In this resonant web, the pineal gland's power is built not just on physical resemblance but on the mind's inexhaustible drive to find meaning, pattern, and promise in the world around and within us. It may turn out that our deepest mysteries are, in the end, the story of how we open ourselves to them. Many have suggested that a hidden barrier, visible only under the scrutiny of medical imaging, is silently closing us off from our highest potential. In the realm of pineal gland lore, calcification is the shadow that lurks behind the promise of awakening. But what does it really mean for the pineal to calcify? As people age, the pineal gland often accumulates small deposits of calcium, forming tiny, sand-like crystals known as corpora arenacea, In fact, radiologists have long noted that the pineal gland, once so mysterious, is sometimes the easiest part of the brain to spot in an X-ray, thanks precisely to these mineral deposits. To clinicians, this is a straightforward consequence of biology, a process much like the calcification of tendons or arteries elsewhere in the body. Researchers have speculated that significant calcification may impair the gland's ability to produce melatonin, thereby disrupting our sleep-wake cycles and contributing to insomnia or disrupted circadian rhythms. But if, as many believe, the pineal gland is the portal for spiritual connection, perhaps calcification is not just a physiological quirk, but the very reason so many struggle to achieve higher consciousness. The notion is compelling. A blocked or sealed pineal is why clarity, intuition, and spiritual depth remain out of reach. This idea resonates powerfully with deeper patterns in the human psyche. The fear that the gates to mystery are closing, that the world is growing dull and inert. It's no coincidence that terms like awakening and enlightenment naturally imply a contrast, an ordinary state that is dull, blocked, or asleep. And science itself, in part, makes it easier for this bridge to be crossed. If calcification may indeed reduce melatonin output and produce measurable changes in sleep quality and mood, doesn't it seem plausible that even deeper faculties could be impaired as well? From here, it's only a small step to imagine that something as subtle and vital as spiritual awareness could be blunted at its very source. The pattern endures. The observation of calcification, the medical discussions of impaired gland function, and the metaphor of blockage all reinforce each other. In this triad, one of negative feedback and imagined loss, each element supplies the missing proof for the others. If one is true, the rest feel inevitable. Questions about spiritual dullness are explained by physical changes. The fear of blocked perception is validated by medical findings. Uncertainty about well-being is amplified by evocative symbols of obstruction. The difficulty so many experience in their quest for spiritual enlightenment may indeed be connected to pineal calcification. But it may be that calcification represents not the closing of a cosmic door, but a challenge that is more mundane and more manageable. If physical buildup in the pineal affects melatonin secretion and sleep cycles, might the negative experiences ascribed to spiritual blockage actually stem from sleeplessness, fatigue, or mood disruption? Could the true culprit be biological noise, not metaphysical darkness? If so, the solution may lie not in rituals to decalcify the pineal, but in supporting healthy circadian rhythms through balanced light exposure, sleep hygiene, and the occasional melatonin supplement. What appears as a spiritual crisis might well be a common physiological challenge, one faced by millions in the age of artificial light and sleepless nights. And yet the concept of pineal crystallization raises deeper questions. Across time and across cultures, crystals have sparkled with an aura of magic and possibility. Ancient seers and modern mystics alike hold crystals to the light and glimpse within them a portal to wisdom, purity, and power. The belief that crystals can channel energy, amplify intentions, or unlock the mind's deepest faculties is nearly universal. From the ceremonial use of quartz to the myth of the philosopher's stone, humanity's fascination with these naturally ordered wonders runs deep. For those who seek the hidden meanings in anatomy, the connection seems almost too perfect to ignore. Medical descriptions of the aging pineal gland frequently mention crystals. As people age, tiny mineral structures that form as calcium salts frequently accumulate within its tissues. The mention of crystallization conjures up not merely a scientific process, but the entire universe of esoteric crystal lore. Stones as vessels of memory, gems as holders of cosmic wisdom, and most alluring of all, the legendary emerald tablet, said in Hermetic tradition to be the key to understanding all creation. With a single word, the glassy deposits of the pineal are transformed into the crystal of consciousness at the center of the mind. What is it that truly fascinates us about crystals themselves? It is not just their beauty, but the revelation of perfect order, an unmistakable geometry arising from the chaos of matter. Where else in nature do we encounter the regularity of a hidden blueprint manifesting in such precise mathematical form? The sight of a crystal, especially for the first time, can seem like a glimpse through the veil. A clear, physical embodiment of order and possibility that is usually invisible in the natural world. Artistic and religious cultures have embraced this as proof of divine design, an ultimate harmony embedded in earthly matter. But is it possible that this profound resonance is a psychological revelation, rather than a physical one? When we encounter crystals, we see not just matter, but meaning. Our minds project into them the hope for order, structure, and transcendent clarity. Think of the awe in the face of a child encountering a gemstone for the first time, or the cultural wonder around sacred stones and tablets. The impact of these shapes is real, but it plays out in the imagination and the yearning for secret knowledge. When we return to the pineal gland, the image of an internal emerald or crystal is even more compelling. Ancient legends speak of enlightenment and immortality as the rewards for those who possess the true stone. Modern esoteric texts weave these motifs into the anatomy of the pineal, seeing in its crystallization not a mundane deposit, but a metamorphosis worthy of alchemy. The discovery of crystalline deposits seems to validate esoteric crystal beliefs. The shimmering power of sacred stones imbues the anatomy with otherworldly significance, and the hope for transcendence finds a foothold in the natural, yet strangely geometrical, processes of the body. If even one part rings true, the rest begin to glow with persuasive force, binding myth, science, and psychological longing into a single shining narrative. However, a closer look suggests a more prosaic reality. The so-called crystals of the pineal gland are not unified gems but tiny, gritty grains, more like sand than sapphire. The symbolic leap, however, is already made. The language and the imagery do the heavy lifting. Each time we encounter the notion of crystals in the pineal, our minds draw on a deep well of myth, metaphor, and visual fascination. So could it be that the crystal we are really seeking is not a physical stone, but inner revelation? That moment of perfect clarity where order and mystery seem to fuse. When it comes to the pineal gland, the enduring seduction of crystal lore may say less about secret organs than about the human quest to see beauty, order, and meaning reflected back from the heart of nature itself. The quest for mystical awakening, a longing shared across eras and cultures, may itself be the deepest mystery of all. In countless teachings and texts throughout history, spiritual transformation has never been depicted as a single moment, triggered by the flick of a hidden biochemical switch. Instead, it is described as a journey, a process of self-discovery, discipline, and profound introspection. Sages from East and West, ancient and modern, have long insisted that the opening of higher perception is a product of sustained inner effort. Prayer, meditation, ethical living, or service. Not the accidental activation of a biological organ. Yet in recent decades we see something new. The embrace of the pineal gland as the key, as though this one structure alone is the gateway to all higher states. The convergence of beliefs around the pineal as a singular point of consciousness, a third eye, a pinecone opening, a crystal of truth, or a site of spiritual blockage, funnels the entire tradition of awakening into a purely physical frame. Is the allure of this idea the promise that anyone can shortcut the path to enlightenment if only the right gland can be activated or cleansed? But could it be that this obsession with the pineal gland subtly undermines what mystics and philosophers have always taught? When every barrier to awakening is viewed as a product of calcification or missing crystals, the implication is clear. Spiritual potential is a matter of chemistry or anatomy, not discipline or will. The flood of warnings about environmental toxins, the emphasis on supplements and special secrets, all suggest that the only thing standing between us and the sublime is physical. That our agency, our effort, has been stolen by circumstance. If that is so, then perhaps this very focus is, itself, the real distraction, the modern conspiracy. We must consider, paradoxically, that the endless search for a physical shortcut is what keeps millions from walking the true path. By investing our hopes in a solitary gland, are we led away from the very practices that traditions the world over agree are essential? Reflection, self-mastery, and ethical action. If mysticism and awakening have always been within reach, open to anyone willing to do the work, what is gained and what is lost, by making the pineal gland the gatekeeper. This is where our exploration of belief converges. The pattern we have seen repeats like a refrain, elements from physical science, ancient texts, and symbolic reasoning reinforcing one another until each feels confirmed by the rest. But maybe, just maybe, the real awakening is not in discovering hidden organs, but in discovering how our minds weave these narratives together in the first place. And so, perhaps the true mystical process is ongoing within us all, not sealed in bone, but waiting to unfold wherever genuine effort, curiosity, and growth are found. As we close, the question is not whether the pineal gland is magical, but whether the magic we seek has always been ours to access, hidden not in the shadows of the skull, but in the light of our conscious choices. Tonight, as you ponder the mystery of the pineal, ask yourself, where is your gateway to higher understanding truly found? And what stories are you telling yourself about what stands in your way?